leather products and the wooden musical instruments. So the obligation of this convention is that the parties will not allow the trade of specimens of species in accordance to the convention of the present convention. So the export, import, and the re-export of the specimens of species included in the Appendix 1 shall require a prior grant and presentation of permits. The introduction from the sea of any specimens of species shall also require prior grant of certificate from the management of authorities. The species included in Appendix 1 and 2 shall require the prior grant of certificate from a management authority of the state introduction. Measures to be taken by the parties are specified in the Article 8 of the Convention. The specific requirements of permits vary depending on the level of restrictions imposed by the CITES. The trade must only authorize in exceptional circumstances. Pwede siya i-trade, but may mga limitation. For example, research, exchange, pwede siya i-trade, or breeding, and educational programs. The export and import permits issued by the states from management authorities are required where Appendix 1 species, so mga species na belong sa Appendix 1 are to be traded internationally, should not cause detrimental effect on the survival of the species and is not for commercial purposes. There are species that can be traded and not, especially kung siya sa research or the educational programs, pwede siya trade, pwede siya i-travel. Pero yung sa species na under sa Appendix 2, it can be, but mukuha dapat sila ng permit from the management of authorities. The convention bodies created. So here is the conference of the parties. During the conference of the parties will review the progress and the conservation of the species included in the appendices. Recommend measures to improve the parties also recommend measures to improve the effectiveness of the convention and make provisions that are necessary to allow that the Secretariat to function effectively. And then, the parties' societies are collectively referred to as the Conference of the Parties or the COPs. Every 2 to 3 years, the Conference of Parties meets to review the implementation of the convention. These meetings last for about 2 weeks and are usually hosted by one of the parties. The meetings are often referred to as COPs. So also, the Standing Committee provide guidance to the implementation of the convention. The membership of the Standing Committee is reviewed at every COP's meeting. The Animal and Plants Committees. So, Animal and Plants Committees are individuals from the 6 geographical regions, which are the Africa, Asia, Europe, North America, Central and South America, Caribbean, and Oceania. So, they meet twice between meetings of the COPs. They are also about this certain species. The CITES Secretariat. The CITES Secretariat is administered by the United Nations Environment Program or UNEP and is located at the Geneva, Switzerland. It has a pivotal role fundamental to the Convention and its functions are laid down in Article 12 of the text of the Convention. So, mabasa na sa inyo niyo kung amo na i-essay, pero diretso na nako pag-explain ko about sa CITES Secretariat. So, the CITES Secretariat distributes information to the parties mostly through meeting documents, and all the documents are available in the 3 working languages like French, English, and Spanish. In the Article 12 of CITES sets the function of the Secretariat. So, ang function ng Secretariat are the inter alia, the arranging of meetings of the conference to the parties, and to provide assistance to the parties regarding all the legislation, science, training, and enforcement of convention. Also, under the Article 13 of CITES or the international measures, if they receive information about the species included in the Appendix 1 and 2 that are adversely affected in the trade, international trade, they will immediately communicate to the management committee and propose remedial actions. Pag masakpan na ang isa ka country yung trade, tapos butang ang isa ka species into danger, so pwede nila dali kuan at doon din dapat makahimo rin sila ng immediate actions. And the current status. Currently CITES has 175 parties. The parties are composed of the member countries that are bound together by the convention. And recently, last 15 to 20 March 2012, over 150 experts met in Geneva for the 26th meeting of the Animals Committee of the CITES. 25, they recommended cautious export quotas for a variety of species and countries, including seahorses from Southeast Asia, giant clams from the Pacific, and sturgeons from the Caspian Sea. Implementing legislations, here are the CITES appendices, the Appendix 1, Appendix 2, and Appendix 3. Here in the Appendix 1, these are the list of species that are mostly endangered and nearly threatened to extinction. They are prohibited to be traded to other countries. So it they allowed to be traded, but in kuan siya na purpose ng sa research bitaw, dili siya for commercial, dili siya for baligya. Naman dili siya pwede sa Appendix 1 sa mga species. For example, tiger, elephant, yang sila dili pwede i-trade for commercial. Tapos kung i-trade sa siya for kuan use research, they also need a permit from the CITES. Appendix 2 are the list of species that are not necessarily threatened by extinction, but it can be traded, but it will be controlled para malikayan ang pag-take advantage or para malikayan ang pag-extinct nila. So if i-trade nila, if i-export or i-import, they also need a permit from the CITES. So the Appendix 3 is a list of species included at request of party that already regulates in the species and that meets the the cooperation of other countries to prevent trade in to prevent unsustainable or illegal exploitation. These are the species that are endangered in some countries. So, pwede siya i-trade but lukuha ka ng um, origin, certificate of origin and the permits of CITES export permits. Doha na yung kinahanglanon, the CITES import permits and the origin of certificate of origin from that country. Appendix 3. The Wildlife Resources Conservation and Protection Act or the Republic Act 9147. So this act provides for the conservation, preservation, and protection of wildlife species and their habitats in order to preserve and encourage ecological balance and biological diversity. It provides furthermore for control and supervision of wildlife capture, hunting, and trade. So these are the objectives of this article: to conserve and protect wildlife species and their habitats, to promote ecological balance and enhance biological diversity, to regulate the collection and trade of wildlife, to pursue with due regard to the national interest, the Philippine commitment to international conventions, protection of wildlife and their habitats, and to initiate or support scientific studies on the conservation of biological diversity. So, it is, paano lang siya, yung masabtanan lang sila. So, the implementing bodies. Sa implementing bodies, may kinalaman ang mga DNR and the DA or the Department of Agriculture. So, the provision of this act shall apply to all the wildlife species that could be traded, like, or bred in captivity or propagated in the country. The Department of Environmental and Natural Resources shall provide overall terrestrial on the plants and animals. Di na lang siya limit sa forest, but also sa mga lahi sa mga animals. Like turtles and tortoises, wetland species, including also crocodiles, water birds, and all amphibians. It's funny kay sa pagtuna ko ang DNR is the limit na gid siya sa mga kahoy, so pwede ba ya apil ba ya siya sa mga animals. So So sa DA, sa Department of Agriculture, shall provide for all aquatic habitats, then critical, all aquatic resources including all fishes.
Ang DA naman ang discussion. How about the BFAR, the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources? Wala, bibigyan siya.
Pwede sa siya sa BFAR. BFAR and the Department of Agriculture. So, including all fishes, aquatic plants, and vertebrates, and all marine mammals except dugo. So, ang dugong pala is, ang responsible is the DNR at the DA. So, there are related laws. The Joint DNR, DA, PCSD Administrative Order Number 1 and the PCSD Resolution Number 08361. So the PCSD is the Palawan Council for Sustainable Development. So yan joint ang DNR, DA, and PCSD. So Joint Implementing Rules and Regulation or the IRR pursuant to Republic Act Number 9147. An act providing for the conservation and protection of wildlife, resources, and their habitats, appropriating funds, therefore, and for other purposes, promulgated to prescribe the procedures and guidelines for the implementation of the Wildlife Resources Conservation and Protection Act. So here is the PCSD Resolution Number 083. 361. So this um, resolution number, it facilitates sustainable development in Palawan through implementing the Environmental Critical Areas Network or the ECAN. It is a range-to-rate integrated approach that provides a graded system of protection and development management across the entire province. This purpose of this strategy is to protect Palawan's ecological integrity and effectively manage it as a fragile island ecosystem. So, protektaran niya ang sa Palawan na part.
So once again, good afternoon everyone. So I will be discussing about the forests. So when we say forest, it is the large area covered with trees and undergrowth. It is the location of the flora and fauna species. So the non-legally binding instrument on all types of forests. So member states agreed upon this international instrument also known as the NLBI on April 27, 2007. It recognizes that forests and trees outside forests provide multiple economic, social, and environmental benefits and emphasizing that sustainable forest management contributes significantly. So to further explain this one, the non-legally binding instrument is international agreement or declarations that provide frameworks to protect forests. So the purpose of NLBI, there are three purposes of NLBI. First is to strengthen political commitment, to enhance the contribution of forests, and to provide a framework for national action and international cooperation. There are also four global objectives on forests regarding sa katong NLBI. So there are four. First is to reverse the loss of forest cover worldwide through the sustainable forest management. Second is to enhance forest-based economic. Third is to increase significantly the area of protected forest. And fourth is to reverse the decline in official development assistance. So, siguro, dili na isa-isahon kay grabe naman siya. Ako ay understandable. So, sa the non-legally binding instrument nato si dry obligations created. So, it is the instrument requires member parties to develop, implement, publish, and as necessary update national forest programs or other strategies for sustainable forest management. So, ang gicreate na obligation sa NLBI is ang kuan daw, ang mga members or parties is kanang need nila i-implement ang national forest programs and other strategies for sustainable forest management. And then there are 7 thematic elements of sustainable forest management. First, A is extent of forest resources. So this means that the measurement or evaluation of the size area, in this thematic is nag-involve also sa pagsabot sa quantity and distribution of forest land. So letter B, forest biological diversity. So in this it encompasses the variety of life forms in the forest. For example, ang kaning mga plants, animals kung yung sa pag-form sa ilang life. Tapos forest health and vitality, productive function of forest resources, protected function of forest resources, socio-economic function of forest, and the legal policy and institutional framework. So this thematic liturgy is kanang nag-pertain siya sa mga laws, regulations, policies established by the governments. Tapos, implementing legislation. So, the Forestry Reform Code of the Philippines Presidential Decree 705 as amended by Presidential Decree 1775. So, this means that the aim of this implementing legislation is to regulate and govern the management, utilization, and conservation of the country's forest resources. It also sought to promote responsible forestry practices, protect the country's forest for the benefit of present and future generations. So, these are the following Forestry Reform Code adapts the following policies. Hindi na siguro masahon kay kung siya, under siya sa Forestry Reform Code. So, the implementing bodies. The Forestry Reform Code, as amended by the revised Forestry Code, created the Bureau of Forestry that shall have jurisdiction and authority over all forest land, grazing lands, and all forest reservation, including watershed reservations, presently administered by other government agencies or instrumentalities. So, katong giingon ni Ryan kung sa Bureau of Forestry. So, when we say jurisdiction, it is the official power to make legal decisions and judgment. Next, we have the International Tropical Timber Agreement of 2006. So, this ITTA was entered into force on December 7, 2011. It was ratified, concurred by the Philippines on July 8, 2009. So when we say tropical timber, it is kanang mga wood gani, wood derived from trees that grows in tropical regions. So ang example ani ng mga trees kay kanang mga mahogany. Kanang mahogany? Yes. Ako kailangan. Tapos kanang mga iguni sa pilain. Hindi ko kailangan. So ang uses is kanang sa furniture making of flooring. So the obligations created. Article 29 of the agreement enumerates the two general obligations. So the first one, the members shall, for the duration of the agreement, use their best endeavors and cooperate to promote the attainment of its objectives and avoid any action contrary thereto. So, in this one, first obligation, the members are obligated to consistently exert their utmost effort, collaboration, and refrain from actions that contradict the agreement goals. So the second obligation is that for members to undertake, to accept, and carry out the decisions. To carry out the decisions of the council under the provisions of this agreement, and to shall refrain from implementing measures that would have the effect of limiting or running counter to them. So, this second agreement states that members should commit to adhering and executing the council's decision as outlined in this agreement. So, ang members, dili siya basta-basta mag-decision mo once agad siya sa councils. We have the convention bodies. So, ako ra kaning kuan kay naasa gyud siya basahon. So, in convention bodies created, it indicates that the International Tropical Timber Organization will remain active. So, its primary role will be to to manage the terms and oversee the functioning of this new agreement. Tapos, ang current status sa NLBI ay there are 61 countries signed. This statement indicates that the agreement concerning forest has been signed by 61 countries, meaning that these nations have officially shown their extent to be bound by the terms of the agreement. So these 65 countries have not only signed the agreement but have also ratified, accepted, or approved it, thereby becoming legally bound by its provisions. I think that's all with my part, and let us all welcome the next reporter.